Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kimberly Margarita. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you do not miss out on future videos. Today is going to be my first installment of the new series that I'm going to be doing here on my channel, which is called Makeup and Mysteries. I'm combining basically my two favorite things on the planet, makeup, and mystery slash conspiracy slash basically anything creepy. So I'm just going to be talking about that stuff while doing my makeup. So I hope you guys will enjoy. If you have any topics you want me to discuss, please leave them down below. I would love to go through those. Anyways, first off, I need to talk about my hair. It is an absolute disaster. I need to get my roots done really badly. It's greasy, it's just nasty. Please ignore it. Secondly, my audio is not good because the microphone on my camera is shit and it's getting worse, so I need to get a new microphone, but I haven't done that yet, so please bear with me, and I hope it's not too bad to listen to, but I will be getting a new mic soon, so I do apologize. So I'm basically just going to be doing like a super simple everyday kind of look, and since this is my first time doing this, I wanted to choose a topic that I am very familiar talking about. So I know this is kind of overdone, but it's a case that I am so interested in, and I just find it so bizarre and so intriguing. So I'm sorry if you guys have heard a lot about this, but I just find it really fascinating to talk about, and that is the case of Elisa Lam. So that is the first case we are going to be talking about today. The second case is going to be the curious case of the Pollock sisters, which kind of revolves around reincarnation. So I hope at least one of those will interest you guys, and yeah, we're basically just gonna jump right in. So obviously, while I'm going to be doing my makeup, I'm not going to be talking about what I'm doing because I'm going to be talking about these topics. So if you guys have any questions for me, I will try and list the products that I'm using up on the screen, but if I miss anything or if you guys have any questions about the makeup look, just leave those down below. So Elisa Lam was a Canadian student. She attended the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, and her body was recovered from a water tower on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, and this was February 19th, 2013. So she had gone down to LA for a trip, and she had been reported missing at the beginning of February, and it wasn't until a couple maintenance workers went to the roof of the hotel to check on the water tanks because some of the hotel guests had been complaining about the condition of the water. Some people were complaining that it had a funny taste and a very odd smell to it. So when these maintenance workers went up to the roof of the hotel, they discovered Elisa Lam's body floating in one of these water tanks. Now, these water tanks were quite massive. They were 1,000-gallon water tanks, and they were approximately 10 feet tall. So how her body was found raised a ton of questions and a lot of speculation. She was found floating in the water tank with no clothes on. She was completely naked with her clothes floating beside her, and her hotel room key and her watch was also found in the tank as well. So what's very odd is that there were absolutely no signs of trauma or harm to her body, and the autopsy revealed that it was an accidental death. And there were no signs of sexual assault or suicide. So the autopsy read as follows: 21-year-old Asian woman found in a water storage tank on the roof of her hotel, moderate decomposition, no trauma, history of bipolar disorder. And the toxicology tests were incomplete. Not enough of her blood was preserved, but they were able to determine that she had no recreational drugs in her system. The only drugs that were in her system were the drugs she took for bipolar disorder, Sinutab and Advil, and a very small amount of alcohol. So a lot of you guys who are familiar with this case, I'm sure you have seen the footage of Elisa that was released of her in the elevator, and this footage is super chilling. I urge you to go watch it if you haven't already. I will put a little clip of it here up on the screen. So basically this footage was the last time she was known to be seen. She exhibits very strange behavior. So basically she gets into the elevator, she studies the buttons, and then hides in the corner of the elevator, and then she kind of peeks around the doors as if somebody is chasing her. And midway through the video, she walks into the hallway and she's doing these very strange motions with her hands. It almost looks as if she's like paddling through water with the motions she's doing. So many people found this footage very frightening and super unsettling. And also the elevator doors appear to keep opening and closing, so people aren't sure why. It could be with all the buttons that she pressed, because it seems she was fiddling with the buttons in the elevator, and people aren't sure what she is doing in this footage. It's so creepy. So let's talk a little bit about the hotel. So the Cecil, I'm not sure if it's the Cecil or the Cecil. I'm bad at pronouncing things, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. So it was a budget hotel in downtown LA that opened in 1927, and it quickly gained a bad reputation due to suicides and violent deaths that occurred there. Its name was actually changed to stay on Main to try and distance itself from its bad past. Allegedly, it was one of the last places that Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, who I'm sure you've heard of, it was one of the last places she was seen alive before she was murdered. And it was also the residence of several different serial killers over the years, Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger, which is super disturbing. At the very least, 16 violent deaths were reported to have happened in this hotel. And because of that, many people think that it is very haunted, especially considering the circumstances that these people died under. Many people think that when people suffer a violent death, that the spirit is much more likely to stay in that place where they were killed. So prior to her death, 3 days into her stay, the last time she was seen alive, she was moved to a private room after her roommates in the hotel were complaining of odd behavior from her. So that was the last time she was seen alive, and the last footage we have of her is her in the elevator. And I forgot to mention that her body had been decaying in the water tower for 13 days. So I can't imagine the people who consumed that water. That is such a disturbing thought. Okay, now that we have gone over the circumstances of her death, we can get into some of the theories. So the first theory that people think is suicide, but there are many, many holes to this theory. First of all, how would she have gotten up to the water tank in the first place? So the water tank was not a place that was available for guests. It was only accessible if you were a worker at the hotel. Also, if she had used the fire escape to access the roof of the hotel, an alarm would have sounded, and there was no record of any alarm going off. And not only that, but these water tanks were 10 feet off the ground. There were these huge metal containers that had no ladder. So how would she have climbed up to the top of the water tank? It just doesn't make any sense. Let alone, how would she have opened the water tanks? The lid to the water tank is extremely heavy and requires more than one person to open it. So suicide to me just doesn't make any sense. I mean, she was a 21-year-old, fairly petite person. It doesn't make any sense how she would have been able to lift this lid up, because when they were recovering her body, it took multiple people to open this tank. So the next theory has to do with her mental illness, which was bipolar disorder. Some people think that she could have had a manic episode resulting in her strange behavior on the elevator. Some people think that she could have stopped taking her medication and this resulted in an episode. But the problem with this is that her medication was found in her system in the toxicology report, so I don't think that that makes too much sense. I feel like every theory with this case just has a lot of holes in it. So the next theory is that some people think there's a chance she could have been murdered by a hotel staff member. The footage of her in the elevator that was released, some people think this footage was tampered with. Some people think there were parts cut out of this footage as if there was somebody in the footage that they didn't want the public to see. Some people also think that certain parts are sped up or slowed down or stretched out. So definitely a lot of people think there's something fishy with the whole elevator footage. Also, if it was a hotel staff member who killed her, they would have had access to the water tanks to put her in there. But again, there was no signs of physical trauma to her body, so a murder just also doesn't really make sense unless her autopsy was forged and they were trying to hide something, which is a possibility as well, but I don't know. I'm so unsure when it comes to this case. Another theory is that some people think she was playing the elevator game, which is a Korean Japanese urban legend, I believe, which states that this game can take participants to another dimension, or they can communicate with spirits. So some people think that's why she was acting so strange in the elevator, is that she could have been participating in this game. I don't know too much about this game or if the person who's participating, if this can kind of open up a portal to negative spirits and then lead to possession. I'm honestly not too sure. But another theory is that some people think that she was possessed by some of these spirits at this hotel. Some people think she was tormented by them, and that could have been causing her odd behavior. I don't know, it definitely does seem to me like it could be paranormal just because nothing really makes sense in a factual way, like nothing really adds up. And the last theory that I want to talk about is quite a strange one. But when Elisa was staying at the hotel, it coincided with a tuberculosis outbreak near around where she was staying. And the strange part of all this is that the tuberculosis drug being used was an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay called the Lam Elisa for short. Like, what kind of a bizarre coincidence is that? So its side effects are confusion and abnormal behavior. So could it been that she was a test subject for this drug and then the toxicology results were forged to hide this drug? And alternatively, some think that this whole case was fabricated to distract from the tuberculosis outbreak and testing, since it is very weird that this drug is just her name reversed. Some people think that this could have been to take away attention from the tuberculosis drug and outbreak. So if anybody were to go search Lam Elisa on Google, you would just be flooded with a ton of information on Elisa Lam. So I have no idea about this theory, but it's just so extremely bizarre to me, the coincidence with the drug name and her name. I don't know, it's too weird. So that is all the theories that I could come across. If you guys have any theories that I didn't mention or any theories of your own on this case, please leave them down below. This case is just super tragic, and it absolutely breaks my heart that it still remains unsolved. My heart goes out to Elisa Lam and all her friends and family and everybody who had to deal with this. But again, I would love to hear your thoughts on this case, any information that I missed, anything like that, please leave it all down below. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on it. So the next case we are going to be talking about is the curious case of the Pollock sisters, which is a compelling case of reincarnation. So John and Florence Pollock lived in Hexham, England with their two daughters, Jacqueline and Joanna. Jacqueline was 6 and Joanna was 11. And on May 5th in 1957, both girls were tragically killed in a car accident. They were both struck by a car on their way to church. So the following year, after the girls were killed, Florence became pregnant, and John strongly believed that his daughters were going to come back. And on October 4th, 1958, Florence gave birth to 2 twin girls. They were identical twins apart from birthmarks. The one twin that they had named Jennifer had a mark on her forehead the same as Jacqueline had, as well as a birthmark on her waist that Jacqueline had also. And when the girls were 2, they started asking for toys that Jacqueline and Joanna had. And as these girls got a little bit older, they began pointing things out that they would have had no way of knowing about the girls, like the school that Jacqueline and Joanna had attended, even though they had no knowledge on the girls. They also began to play very specific games that Jacqueline and Joanna had played, and they called these games the same things. They also liked the same foods as them, so there was just so many strange coincidences. So Jillian and Jennifer also developed a very, very intense fear of cars. They got pretty hysterical when cars would pass them by, saying that the car was going to get them. And Jennifer was very dependent on Jillian the same way that Jacqueline had been very dependent on Joanna. And their mom started to notice them playing quite sinister games with each other. Jennifer would lay on the floor with her head on Jillian, and Jillian would speak to Jennifer and tell her that blood was coming out of her eyes because that's where the car struck her. So can you imagine your child doing these kinds of activities knowing that that's how your previous children had died? Like, that is just way too spooky. And by the time that Jillian and Jennifer had reached the age of 5, their memories from their past life started vanishing, and they went on to lead very normal lives. So in cases of reincarnation, it's very common for people to forget their past lives as they get older and as they reach a certain age, and they kind of get disconnected from that past life. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think that it's just bizarre coincidences? Do you think it's just the parents kind of being hopeful since they really wanted their daughters to come back? Or do you believe that this was truly reincarnation? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below on this case and just kind of reincarnation in general, because I'm really fascinated by it and cases like this just really interest me, and I would definitely love to discuss more of them. Okay, and my makeup is complete, so that is the end of this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed learning about these cases. Let me know if you have anything to add down below. I will definitely be covering more uncommon cases and ones that aren't talked about as much, but I knew that I had to start with this one. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye!